Hello, welcome to Monday Night Moods with some dogs barking in the background. Don't know if you can hear them though, but woof woof woof. And I also apologise if you can hear my laptop. It is the fan is making a lot of noise as well today, and I don't know why. So it's not that hot, but eh. Anyway, welcome back to Monday Night Moods, where I, your erstwhile storyteller, is telling the tale from Paradise Lost. Not the goth band, though they are good, and this is where they got their name from. We are telling the tale of Paradise Lost by John Milton. Link and everything to where I'm reading this from, Project Gutenberg, in the notes and things. If you are watching this live on Twitch, I'll post the link at some point somewhere. I don't know where. If not, if you're on YouTube, it'll be in the show notes down below. So yes, welcome, welcome, welcome. Get those Monday night moods going. So grab yourself a drink, sit back, and enjoy the tales. Book 2. High on a throne of royal state, which far outshone the wealth of Ormus and of Ind, or where the gorgeous East with richest hand showers on her kings barbaric pearl and gold, Satan exalted sat. By merit raised to that bad eminence, from despair thus high uplifted beyond hope, aspires beyond thus high, insatiate to pursue vain war with heaven, and by success untaught. His proud imaginations thus displayed, power and dominions, deities of heaven. For since no deep within her gulf can hold immortal vigour, thou oppressed and fallen, I give not heaven nor for lost. For this descent, celestial virtues rising will appear more glorious and more dread than from no fall, and trust themselves to fear no second fate. Me, though just right, and the fixed laws of heaven, did just first create your leader, next free choice with what besides, in council or in fight, hath been achieved of merit, yet this loss, thus far as least recovered, hath much more established in a safe unenvied throne, yielded with full consent. The happy estate in heaven, which follows dignity, might draw envy from each inferior, but who here will envy from the highest place exposes, foremost to stand against the thunderer's aim, your bulwark, and condemns to the greatest share of endless pain? Where there is then no good for which to strive, no strife can grow up there from faction, for none sure will claim in hell precedence, none whose portion is so small of present pain. That with ambitious mind will covet more, with this advantage then to union, and firm faith, and firm accord, more than can be in heaven, we now return to claim our just inheritance of old, surer to prosper than prosperity could have assured us. But by what best way, whether of open war or covert guile, we now debate, we can advise, may speak. He ceased, and next him Moloch, sceptred king, sceptred king stood up, the strongest and fiercest spirit that fought in heaven, now fiercer by despair. His trust was with the eternal, to be deemed equal in strength, and rather than be less, cared not to be at all. With that care lost went all his fear of God, or hell, or worse, he recked not. And these words thereafter spake, my sentence is for open war of wiles most unexpert, I boast not. Them let those contrive who need, or when they need not now, for while they sit contriving shall the rest, millions that stand in arms and longing wait the signal to ascend, sit lingering here, heaven fugitives, and for their dwelling place accept this dark opprobrious den of shame, the prison of this tyranny who reigns by your delay? No, Let us rather choose, armed with hell flames and fury all at once, our heaven's high towers to force resistless way, turning our torches into horrid arms against the torturer, when to meet the noise of his almighty engine, he shall hear infernal thunder, and for lightning see black flame and horror shot with equal rage among his angels, and his throne itself mixed with Tartarean sulphur and strange fire, his own invented torments. But perhaps the way seems difficult and steep to scale with upright wing against a higher foe. Let such bethink them, if the sleepy drench of the thoughtful lake be new me not still, that in our proper motion we ascend up to our native seat. Descent and fall to us is adverse. Who but felt of late when the fierce foe hung on our broken rear, insulting, and pursued us through the deep, with what compulsion and laborious flight we sunk thus low? The ascent is easy then, the event is feared. Should we again provoke our stronger? Some worse way his wrath may find to our destruction. If there be in hell fear to be worse destroyed, what can be worse than to dwell here, driven out from bliss, condemned in this abhorred deep to utter woe, where pain of extinguishable fire must exercise us without hope of end, the vassals of his anger, when the scourge inexorably and the torturing hell calls us to penance? More destroyed than thus, we should be quite abolished and expire. What fear we then? What doubt we to incense his utmost ire, which to his highest enraged will either quite consume us and reduce to nothing his essential, happier father miserable to the eternal being, or you get an itchy eye halfway through reading. Or if our substance be indeed divine and cannot cease to be, we are at worse on this side nothing, and by proof we feel our power sufficient to disturb his heaven, and with perpetual inroads in alarm, though inaccessible, his fatal throne. Which, if not victory, is yet revenge. He ended frowning, and his look denounced desperate revenge and battle dangerous to less the gods. Oh, the other side rose up Belial. On the other side rose up Belial, in act more grateful and humane, a fairer person lost, not heaven. He seemed for dignity composed and high exploit, but all was false and hollow, though his tongue dropped manna, and could make the worst appear the better reason, to perplex and dash maturest counsels, for his thoughts were low, to vice industrious, but to nobler deeds timorous and slothful, yet he pleased the ear, and with a persuasive accent thus began. I should be much for open war, O peers, as not behind in hate it was urged, main reason to persuade immediate war, did not dissuade me most, and seemed to cast ominous conjecture on the whole success. When we were most excels in fact of arms, in what he counsels, in what excels, mistrustful grounds his courage on despair and utter dissolution, as the scope of all his aim, after some dire revenge. First, what revenge? The towers of heaven are filled with armed watch that render all access impregnable. Oft on the bordering deep encamp their legions, or with obscure wings scout far and wide into the realm of night, scorning surprise. Or could we break our way by force, and at our heels all hell should rise with blackest insurrection, to confound heaven's purest light, yet our great enemy, all incorruptible, would be on his throne, still unpolluted, and the ethereal mole incapable of stain would soon expel his mischief and purge off the baser fire victorious. Thus, repulsed, our final hope is flat despair. We must exasperate the almighty victor, to spend all his rage, and that must end us. That must be our cure. to be no more sad cure, for who would lose, though full of pain, this intellectual being, those thoughts that wander through eternity, to perish rather, swallowed up and lost in wide womb of uncreated night, devoid of sense and motion? And who knows, let this be good, whether our angry foe can give it, or will ever. Tea time. How he can is doubtful, that he will never is sure. Will he, so wise, let loose at once his ire, belike though importance, or unaware, to give his enemies their wish, and end them in his anger, whom his anger saves to punish endless? Wherefore cease we then, say they who counsel war, we are decreed, reserved and destined to eternal woe. Whatever doing, what can we suffer more? What can we suffer worse? Is this worse, thus sitting, thus consulting, thus in arms? What when we fled amain, pursued and struck with heaven's afflicting thunder, and besought the deep to shelter us? This hell then seemed a refuge for those wounds, or when we lay chained on a burning lake, that sure was worse. What if the breath that kindled those grim fires awaked should blow them into sevenfold rage and plunge us in the flames? Or from above should intermitted vengeance arm again his red hand to plague us? What if all her stories were opened, and this firmament of hell should spout her cataracts of fire, impotent horrors, threatening hideous fall one day upon our heads, while we perhaps designing or exhorting glorious war, caught in a fairy tempest, shall be heard each on his rock transfixed, the sport and prey of racking whirlwinds, or ever sunk upon yon boiling ocean, wrapped in chains, there to converse with everlasting groans, unrespited, unpitied, unreprieved, ages of hopeless end. This would be worse. War, therefore, open or concealed alike, my voice dissuades, for what can force or guile with them? Or who deceive his mind, whose eyes views all things at one view? He from heavens higheth all those our motions vain, sees and derides, not more almighty to resist our might, than wise to frustrate all our plots and wiles. Shall we then live thus vile, the race of heaven, thus trampled, thus expelled to suffer here, chains of these torments, better these than worse? By my advice, since fate inevitable subdues us, an omnipotent decree the victor's will, to suffer as to do, our strength is equal. Not the law and just that so ordains. This was at first resolved, if we were wise, against so great a foe contending, and so doubtful what might fall. I laugh, when those who at the spear are bold and venturous, if that fail them, shrink and fear what they know must follow, to endure exile or ignominy, or bonds or pain, the sentence of their conqueror. This is now our doom, which if we can sustain and bear, our supreme foe in time may much remit his anger, and perhaps, thus far removed, not mind us, not offending, satisfied with what is punished. Whence these raging fires will slacken, in his breath stir not the flames. Our pure essence then will overcome the noxious vapour, or endured not feel, or changed at length, and to the place confirmed in temper and in nature will receive familiar the fierce heat and void of pain. This horror will grow mild, this darkness light, beside what hope the never-ending flight of future days may bring, what chance, what change worth waiting, since our present lot appears, for happy though but ill, for ill not worst, if we procure not to ourselves more woe, thus Belial, with words clothed in reason garb, counselled ignoble ease, and peaceful sloth, not peace. And after him thus Mammon spake, either to disenthrone the King of Heaven we war, if we war be best, or to regain our own right lost. Him to unthrone we then may hope, with everlasting fate shall yield to fickle chance, and chaos judge the strife. The former vain to hope argues is vain, the latter, for what peace can be for us within heaven bound, unless heaven's Lord supreme we overpower? Suppose he should relent and publish grace to all, on promise made of new subjection, with what eyes could we stand in his presence humble, and receive strict laws imposed to celebrate his throne, with warbled hymns and to his Godhead sing, forced hallelujahs while his lordly sits our envied sovereign, and his altars breathe ambrosial odours and ambrosial flowers, our servile offerings. This must be our task in heaven, this our delight. How wearisome eternity so spent in worship paid to whom we hate. T. Let us not then pursue by force impossible, by leave ordained unacceptable, though in heaven our state of splendid vassalage, but rather seek our own good for ourselves, and from our own live to ourselves, though in this vast recess, free and to none accountable, preferring hard liberty before the easy yoke of servile pomp. Our greatness will appear then most conspicuous, when great things of small, useful of hurt, prosperous of averse, we can create, and in what place soe'er thrive under evil, and work ease out of pain through labour and endurance. This deep world of darkness do we dread, how oft amidst thick clouds of dark doth heaven's all-ruling sire choose to reside, his glory unobscured, and with the majesty of darkness round covers his throne, from whence deep thunders roar, mustering their rage, and heaven resembles hell. As he our darkness, cannot we his light imitate when we please? This disart soil wants not her hidden lustre, gems and gold, nor wot we skill or art, from whence to raise magnificence, and what can heaven show more? Our torments also may in length of time become our elements, those piercing fires as soft as now severe, our temper changed into their temper, which must needs remove the sensible of pain. All things invite to peaceful counsel and settled state of order, how in safety best we may compose our present evils, with regard of what we are and where, dismissing quite all thoughts of war. Yea, have what I advise. He scarce has finished when such murmured filled the assembly, as when hollow rocks retain the resounding of blustering winds, which all night long has roused the sea. Now with hoarse cadence lulled seafaring men are watched, whose bark by chance or pinnacle anchors in a craggy bay after the tempest. Such applause was heard as Mammon ended, and his sentence pleased, advising peace for such another field they dreaded worse than hell. So much the fear of thunder and the sword of Michael wrought still within them, and no less desire to found this nether empire, which might rise by policy and long process of time in emulation opposite to heaven. Which when Beelzebub perceived, then whom Satan accept, none higher sat, with grave accept he rose, and in his rising seemed a pillar of state, deep on his front engraven deliberation sat, and public care. And princely counsel in his fate yet shone, majestic, though in ruin. Sage he stood, with Atlantean shoulders fit to bear the weight of the mightiest monarchies. His look drew audience and attention still as night, or summer's noontide air, while thus he spake, thrones and imperial powers, offspring of heaven, ethereal virtues, all those titles now must we renounce, and changing style be called Prince of Hell? For so the popular vote inclines here to continue, and build up here a growing empire. Doubtless while we dream, and know not the King of Heaven hath doomed this place our dungeon, not our safe retreat beyond his potent arm, to live exempt from heaven's high jurisdiction, in new league banded against his throne, but to remain in strictest bondage, though thus far removed under the inevitable curb reserved his captive multitude. For he, be sure, in height or depth, still first and last will reign sole king, and of his kingdom lose no part by our revolt, but over hell extend his empire, with the iron sceptre rule us here, as with his golden those in heaven. What sit when we projecting peace and war? War hath determined us, and foiled with loss irreparable. Teams of getting a dry throat. Terms of peace yet non-vouched or sought. For what peace will be given to us enslaved, but custody serve, and stripes and arbitrary punishment inflicted? And what peace can we return, but to our power hostility and hate, untamed reluctance and revenge, though slow, yet ever plotting how the conqueror least may reap his conquest, and may least rejoice in doing what we most suffering feel? Ooh. Nor will occasion want, nor shall we need with dangerous expedition to invade heaven, whose high walls fear no assault or siege or ambush from the deep. What if we find some easier enterprise? There is a place, if ancient and prophetic fame in heaven ere not, another world, a happy seat of some new race called man, about this time to be created like us, though less in power and excellent, but favoured more of him who rules above. So was his will pronounced among the gods, and by an oath that shook heaven, whole circumference, confirmed, thither let this bend all our thoughts, to learn what creatures there inhabit, of what mould or substance, how endued, and what their power, and where their weakness, how attempted best by force or subtlety. Though heaven be shut, and heaven's high arbiter sits secure in his own strength, this place may lay exposed, the utmost border of his kingdom, left to their defence who hold it. Here, perhaps, some advantageous act may be achieved by sudden onset, either with hellfire to waste his whole creation, or possess all as our own, and drive, as we were driven, to puny inhabitants, or if not drive, seduce them to our party, that their God may prove their foe, and with repenting hand abolish his own works. Thus would surpass common revenge, and interrupt his joy in our confusion, and our joy upraise in his disturbance, when his darling sons, hurled headlong to partake with us, shall curse their frail origins, and faded bliss, faded so soon. Advise if this be worth attempting, or to sit in darkness here, hatching vain empires. Thus Beelzebub pleaded his devilish counsel, first devised by Satan, and in part proposed, for whence but from the author of all ill could spring so deep a malice, to confound the race of mankind in one root, and earth with hell to mingle and involve, done all to spite the great Creator? But their spite still serves his glory in augment. The bold design pleased highly those infernal states, and joy sparkled in their eyes, with full assent they vote. Whereat his speech he thus renews, well have ye judged, well ended long debate, synod of gods, and like to what ye are, great things resolved, which from the lowest deep will once more lift us up, in spite of fate, near our ancient seat, perhaps in view of those bright confines, whence with neighbouring arms and opportune excursion we may chance re-enter heaven, or else in some middle zone dwell not unvisited of heaven's fair light, secure, and at the brightening orient beam purge off this gloom. The soft, delicious air to heal the scar of those corrosive fires shall breathe her balm. But first, whom shall we send in search of this new world? Whom shall we find sufficient? Who shall tempt with wandering feet the dark unbottomed infinite abyss, and through the palpable obscure find out his uncouth way, or spread his eerie flight unborn with indefatigable wings over the vast abrupt, ere he arrive the happy lie? What strength, what art can then suffice, or what evasion bear him safe? Though through the strict sentries and stations thick of angels watching round, here he had need all circumspection. Circumspection, weird word. All circumspection, and we now no less choice in our suffrage, for on whom we send the weight of the weight of all and our last hope relies. This said, he sat, and expectation held, his look suspense, awaiting who'd appeared to second or oppose, or undertake this perilous attempt. But all sat mute, pondering the danger with deep thoughts, and each in other's countenance read his own dismay. Astonishment none among the choice and prime of those heaven-warring champions could be found so hardy as to proffer or accept alone the dreadful voyage. Till at last Satan, whom now transcendent glory raised above his fellows, with monarchal pride conscious of highest worth, unmoved thus spake. O progeny of heaven, imperial thrones with reason hath deep silence and demure seized us, though, undismayed, long is the way and hard that out of hell leads up to light. Our prison strong, this huge convex of fire, outrageous to devour, immures us round ninefold, and gates of burning adamant barred over us prohibit all egress. These past, if any past, the void profound of an unessential night receives him next, wide gaping, and with utter loss of being threatens him, plunged in that abortive gulf. If thence he scape into the world, if thence he scape into whatever world or unknown region, what remains him less? Then unknown dangers and as hard escape. But I should ill become this throne, O peers of this imperial sovereignty, adorned with splendour, armed with power, if all proposed and judged of public moment, in this shape of difficulty or danger could deter me from attempting. Wherefore do I assume these royalties, and not refuse to reign, refusing to accept as great a share of hazard as of honour? Due alike to him who reigns, and so much to him due of hazard more, as he above the rest high honoured sits? Go therefore, mighty powers, terror of heaven, thou fallen, intended at home, while here shall be our home, what best may ease the present misery and render hell more tolerable. If there be cure or charm to respite or deceive, or slack the pain of this of this ill mansion, intermit no watch against a wakeful foe, while I abroad, though all coats of dark destruction seek deliverance for us all. This enterprise none shall partake with me. Thus saying rose the monarch, and prevented all reply. Prudent, least from his resolution raised others among the chief might offer now, certain to be refused what erst they feared. And so refused might in opinion stand his rivals, winning cheap the high repute which he through hazard huge must earn. But they dreaded not more the adventure than his voice forbidding, and at once with him they rose. Their rising all at once was the sound of thunder heard remote. Towards him they bend with awful reverence prone, and as a god extol him, equal to the highest in heaven. Nor failed they to express how much they praised that the general safety he despised his own, for neither do the spirits damned lose all their virtue, These bad men should boast their spacious deeds on earth, which glory excites or close ambition varnished over the zeal. Thus they their doubtful consultations dark ended, rejoicing in their matchless chief. As when from mountain tops the dusky clouds ascending, while the north wind sleeps over spread heaven's cheerful face, the lowering element scowls o'er the darkened landscape, snow or shower. If chance the radiant sun will farewell sweet extend his evening beam, the fields revive, the birds their notes renew, the bleating herds attest their joy, that hill and valleys ring, O shame to men, devil with devil damned firm concord holds. Men only disagree of creatures' rationale, though under hope of heavenly grace, and God proclaiming peace, yet live in hatred, enmity, and strife among themselves, and levy cruel wars, wasting the earth, each other to destroy. As if which might induce us to accord, man had not hellish foes now, and now besides. That day and night for his destruction wait, the Stygian council thus dissolved, and forth in order came the grand infernal peers. Mist came their mighty paramount, and deemed alone the antagonist of heaven, nor less than hell's dread emperor, with pomp supreme, and godlike and godlike imitated state him round, a globe of fiery seraphim enclosed with bright emblazon and horrent arms. Then of their session ended, they bid cry with trumpets regal sound the great result. Toward the four winds, speedy cherubim put to their mouths the sounding alchemy by heralds' voice explained. The hollow abyss heard far and wide, and all the host of hell, with deafening shout, returned them loud acclaim, thence more at ease their minds, and somewhat raised by false presumptuous hope, the ranged powers disband, and wandering each his several way pursues, an inclination or sad choice leads him perplexed, where he may likest find truce to his restless thoughts, and entertain the irksome hours till his great chief return. Part on the plain, or in the air sublime, upon the wing or the swift race contend, as asked the Olympian games or Pythian fields, part curb the fairy steeds, or shun the goal with rapid wheels, or fronted brigades form. And when to warn proud cities war appears, waged in the troubled sky, and armies rush to battle in the clouds, before each van prick forth the airy knights, and couch the spears till thickest legions close, with feats of arms from either end of heaven the welkin burns. Others with vast Typhoean rage more fell rend up both rocks and hills, and ride the air in whirlwind. Hell scarce holds the wild uproar, as when a Greek names, as when at Alcides and Oilia, crowned with conquest, felt the envenomed robe and tore through the pain by the roots Thessalian pines, and Lycas from the top of Oita through into the Eubic Sea. Others more mild retreated in silent valley, sing with notes of angelic to many a harp their own heroic deeds and hapless fall by doom of battle, and complain that fate-free virtue should enthrall to force or chance. Their song was partial, but to the harmony, what could it less when spirits immortal sing? Suspended hell, and took with ravishment the thronging audience, in discourse more sweet, for eloquence the soul, song charms the sense. Others apart sat on the hill retired, in thoughts more elevate, and reasoned high of providence, foreknowledge, will, and fate, fixed fate, free will, foreknowledge absolute, and found no end in wandering mazes lost. Of good and evil much they argued then, of happiness and final misery, passion and apathy, and glory and shame, vain wisdom all and false philosophy. Yet with a pleasing sorcery could charm pain for a while or anguish, and excite fallacious hope, or arm the obscured breast with stubborn patience, as with triple steel. Another part in squadrons and gross bands on bold adventures to discover wide that dismal world in any clime perhaps might yield them easy habitation. Then four ways their flying march along the banks of four infernal rivers that disgorge into the burning lake their baleful streams, adored Styx, bored Styx, the flood of deadly hate, sad Acheron of sorrow, black and deep, Cocytus, named of lamentation loud, heard the rueful stream, fierce Phlegethon, whose waves of torrent fire inflame with rage, far off from those a slow and silent stream, left the river of oblivion rules, her waith labyrinth, whereof who drinks. Forthwith his former state and bending being forgets both joy and grief, pleasure and pain. But this flood, a frozen continent, lies dark and wild, beat with perpetual storms of whirlwind and dire hail, which on firm land thaws not, but gathers heaps and ruin seams of ancient pile. All else deep snow and ice, a gulf profound at that Subbonian bog, betwixt Damietta and Mount Cassius old, where armies whole have sunk, the parching air burns for, and cold performs the effect of fire. Thither by harpy-footed furies hailed, at certain revolutions all the damned are brought, and feel by turns the bitter change of fierce extremes by change more fierce, from beads of raging fire to starving ice. Their soft ethereal warmth, and there to pine immovable, inflict and frozen round periods of time, thence hurried back to fire. They ferry over this Lethean sound, both to and fro, their sorrow to augment, and wish and struggle as they pass to reach the tempting stream, with one small drop to lose in sweet forgetfulness or pain and woe, all in one moment, and so near the brink. But fate withstands, and to oppose the attempt, Medusa with Gorgonian terror guards the ford, and of itself the water flies. All taste of living white, as once it fled the lip of Tantalus. Thus roving on in confused march forlorn, the adventurous bands with shuddering horde pale, and eyes aghast view first their lamentable lot, and found no rest. Through many a dark and dreary vale they passed, and many a region dolorous, o'er many a frozen, many a fairy Alp, rocks, caves, lakes, fens, bogs, dens, and shades of death, a universe of death, which God by curse created evil, for evil only good, where all life dies, death lives, and nature breeds perverse or monstrous, or prodigious things abominable, unutterable, and worse than fables yet have feigned or feared conceived, gorgons and hydras and chimeras dire. Meanwhile the adversary of God and man, Satan, with thoughts inflamed of highest design, put on swift wings, and toward the gates of hell explores his solitary flight. Sometimes he scours the right-hand coast, sometimes the left, now shaves with level wing deep, then soars up in the fiery concave, toiling high. And when far off at sea a fleet described hangs in the clouds, by equinoctial winds, close sailing from Bengala, or lies alternate and Tidor, whence merchants bring their spice drugs, they on the trading flood through the wide Ethiopia to the Cape ply, stemming nightly toward the pole. So seemed far off the flying fiend at last appear, Hell bounds high reaching to the horrid roof, and thrice threefold the gates. Three folds were brass, three iron, three of adamantine rock, impenetrable, impaled with circling fire, yet consumed. Before the gates there sat on either side a formidable shape. The one seemed woman to the waist and fair, but ended foul in many a scaly fold, voluminous and vast, a serpent armed with a mortal sting. About her middle round a cry of hellhounds never ceasing barked, with wide Serbian mouths full loud, and rung a hideous peal. Yet when they list would creep, if out disturb their noise in her womb and kennel there, yet there still barked and howled within unseen. Far less abhorred than these vexed Scylla, bathing in the sea that parts Calabria from the hoarse Trinasian shore, nor uglier follow the night hag, when called in secret, riding through the air, she comes lured with the smell of infant blood, to dance with Lapland witches, while the labouring moon eclipses out their charms. The other shape, if shape it might be called that shape, had none distinguishable in member, joint, or limb, or substance might be called that shadow seemed. For each seemed either black it stood as night, fierce as the 10 furies, terrible as hell, and shook a dreadful dart. What seemed his head the likeness of a kingly crown had on. Satan was now at hand, and from his seat the monster moving onward came as fast. With horrid strides hell trembled as he strode. The undaunted fiend, what this might be admired, not feared, God and his Son except, created thing now valued nor shunned, and with disdainful look thus first began. Whence and what art thou, execrable shape, that darst thou grim and terrible advance thy miscreant front athwart my way? To yonder gates through them I mean to pass, that be assured without leave asked of thee. Retire, O taste thy folly, and learn by proof hell-born not to contend with spirits of heaven. To whom the goblin full of wrath replied, Art thou that traitor angel? Art thou he who first broke peace in heaven and faith, till then unbroken and in proud rebellious arms drew after him the third part of heaven's sons, conjured against the highest, for which both thou and thy outcast from God, and here condemned to wasteful eternal days in woe and pain? And reckonest thou thyself with spirits of heaven, hell doomed, and breathest defiance here and scorn? Were I reigned king, and to enrage thee more, thy king and lord? Back to thy punishment, false fugitive, and to thy speed add wings, lest with a whip of scorpions I pursue thy lingering, or with one stroke of this dart strange horrors see thee, and pangs unfelt before. So spake the grizzled terror, and in shape, and so speaking and so threatening, grew tenfold more dreadful and deform. On the other side, incensed with indignation, Satan stood, unterrified, and like a comet burned that fires the length of Orpheus huge in their arctic sky, and from his horrid hair shakes pestilence and war. Each at the head levelled his deadly aim, their fatal hands no second stroke intend, and such a frown each cast at the other, as when the two black clouds with heaven's artillery fought, came rattling on over the Caspian Sea, then stand front to front, hovering a space, till winds the signal blow to join the dark encounter in mid-air. So frowned the mighty combatants that hell grew darker at their frown. So matched they stood, for never but once more was either like to meet a great foe, and now great deeds had been achieved, whereof all hell had rung. Had not the snake Just put my cup down there. Had not the snaky sorceress that sat fast by Hellgate and kept the fatal key, risen with hideous outcry, rushed between. "O father, what intends thy hand?" she cried, against thy only son? What fury, O son, possesses thee to bend that mortal dart against thy father's head? And knowest for whom? For him who sits above and laughs the while at thee ordained his drudge to execute whate'er his wrath, which he calls justice, bids his wrath, which one day will destroy ye both. She spake, and at her words the hellish pest forbore, and then these to her Satan returned. So strange their outcry, and thy words so strange, thou interpossessed, that my sudden hand prevented spares to tell thee yet by deeds what it intends, till first I know of thee what thing thou art, thus doubled formed, and why in his infernal veil first met thou callest me father, and that phantasm callest me son. I know thee not, nor ever will till now, sight more detestable than him and thee, to whom thus the portress of Hell Gate replied. Hast thou forgotten me then? And do I seem now in thine eyne so foul, once deemed so fair in heaven, when at thy assembly and in sight of all the seraphim with thee combined in bold conspiracy against heaven's king? All of a sudden a miserable pain surprised thee, dimmed thine eyes and dizzle swum in darkness. Will thy head flames thicken fast through forth? While thy head flames thicken fast through forth, till on the left side, opening wide, likest to thee in shape and countenance bright, then shining heavenly, a goddess armed, out of thy head I sprung. Amazement seized all the host of heaven, back they recoiled, afraid at first, and called me Sin, and for a sign portentous held me, but familiar grown I pleased, and with attractive grace won the most averse, thee chiefly, who full oft thyself in me thy perfect image viewing becamest enamoured, and such joy thou lookest with me in secret, that my womb conceived a growing burden. Meanwhile war arose and fields were fought in heaven, wherein remained, for what could else to our almighty foe clear victory, to our part loss and rout through the Imperium. Down they fell, driven headlong from the pitch of heaven, down into this deep, and in the general fall I also, at which time this powerful key into my hand was given, with charge to keep these gates for ever shut, which none can pass without my opening. Pensive here I sat alone, but long I sat not, till my womb pregnant by thee, and now excessive groan, prodigious motion felt and rueful throes. At last this odious offspring, whom thou seest, thine own begotten, breaking violent way, tore through my entrails. With that fear and pain distorted, all my nether shape thus grew transformed. But he, my inbred enemy, forth issued, brandishing his fatal dart, made to destroy. I fled and cried out death. Hell trembled at his hideous name and sighed from all her caves, and back resounded death. I fled, but he pursued, though more it seems inflamed with lust than rage. And swift afar me overtook his mother all dismayed, and embraces forcibly and foul engendering with me, of that rape beget these yelling monsters, that with ceaseless cry surround me, as thou sawest, hourly conceived and hourly born, with sorrow infinite to me, for when they list into the womb that bred them they return, and howl and gnaw my bowels their repast, then bursting forth afresh with conscious terrors vex me round, that the rest of intermission none I find, before mine eyes in opposition sits, grim death my son and foe, who sets them on, and me his parent would full soon devour, for want of other prey. But that he knows his end with mine involved, and knows that I should prove a bitter morsel and his bane, whenever that shall be, so fate pronounced. But thou, O father, I forewarn thee, shun his deadly arrow, neither vainly hope to be invulnerable in those bright arms, thou tempered heavenly, for that mortal dint, save he who reigns above, none can resist. She finished, and the subtle fiend his lore soon learned, now milder, and thus answered smooth, dear daughter, since thou claimest for me thy sire, and my fair son here showest me the dear pledge of dalliance had with thee in heaven, and joys then sweet, now sad to mention, through dire change befallen us unforeseen, unthought of, know I come no enemy, but to set free from out this dark and dismal house of pain both him and thee, and all the heavenly host of spirits that in our just pretences armed fell with us from on high. From them I go this uncouth errand sole, and one for all myself expose, with lonely steps to tread the unfounded deep. And though the void immense to search with wondering quest, a place foretold should be, and by concurring signs ere now created vast and round, a place of bliss in the purlieus of heaven, and therein placed a race of upstart creatures to supply perhaps our vacant room, though more removed lest heaven surcharged with potent multitude might hap to remove new broils. Be this or out, then this more secret now design I haste to know, and this once known shall soon return, and bring ye to the place where thou and death shall dwell at ease. And up and down and unseen wing silently the buxom air, embalmed with odours. There ye shall be fed and filled immeasurably, all things shall be your prey. He ceased, for both seemed highly pleased, and death grinned horrible and ghastly smile. To hear his famine should be filled, and blessed his more, destined to be good hour, no less rejoiced his mother bad, and thus bespake her sire, the key of this infernal pit is due. The key of this infernal pit by due, and by command of heaven's all-powerful king, I keep. By him forbidden to unlock these adamantine gates, against all force death ready stands to interpose his dart, fearless to be rematched by light living might. But what am I to his commands above, who hates me, and hath hither thrust me down into the gloom of Tartarus profound, to sit in hateful office here confined, inhabitant of heaven and heavenly born, here in perpetual agony and pain, with terrors and clamors compassed round of mine own brood, that on my bowels feed. Thou art my father, thou art my author, thou my being gavest me, whom I should obey, but thee, whom follow? Thou wilt bring me soon to that new world of light and bliss, among the gods who live at ease, where I shall reign at thy right hand voluptuous, as beseems thy daughter and thy darling, without end. Thus saying, from her side the fatal key, sad instrument of all our woe, she took, and towards the gate, ruling her bestial train, forthwith the huge portcullis high up drew, which but herself, not all the Stygian powers, could once have moved. Then in the keyhole turns the intricate wards, and every bolt and bar and massy iron or solid rock with ease unfastens on a sudden open file, with impetuous recoil and jarring sound, the eternal doors and their hinges great, harsh thunder, that the lowest bottom shook of Erebus. She opened, but to shut excelled her power. The gates wide open stood, that with extended wings a bannered host underspread ensigns marching might pass through, with horse and chariots ranked in loose array, so wide they stood, and like a furnace mouth cast forth unredoubting smoke and ruddy flame. Before their eyes in sudden view appear the secrets of the hoary deep, a dark, illimitable ocean without bound, without dimension, where length, breadth, and height, and time and place are lost, where eldest night and chaos, ancestors of nature, hold eternal anarchy, amidst the noise of endless wars and by confusion stand. For hot, cold, moist and dry, for champions fierce strive here for mastery, and to battle bring their embryon atoms. They they around the flag of each his faction in their several clans, light armed or heavy sharp, smooth, swift or slow, swarm populous, unnumbered at the sands of Barca or Seine's torrid soil, levied to side with warring winds and poise their lighter wings. To whom these most adhere, here he rules a moment, chaos umpire sits, and by decision more embroils the fray, by which he reigns. Next him high arbiter chance governs all. In this wild abyss the womb of nature and perhaps her grave, or neither sea nor shore nor air nor fire, but all these in their pregnant causes mixed, confusedly, and which thus must ever fight, unless thy almighty Maker them ordain his dark materials to create more worlds into this wild abyss. The wary fiend stood on the brink of hell and looked awhile, pondering his voyage, for no narrow firth he had to cross, nor was his ear less peeled with noises loud and ruinous to compare great things with small. Then, when Bologna storms with all the battering engines bent to raise some capital city or less, then in his frame of heaven were falling, and those elements in mutiny had from her axle torn the steadfast earth. At last his sail broad veins he spreads for flight, and in the surging smoke uplifted spurns the ground. Thence many a league, as in a cloudy chair ascending rides, audacious, but that seat soon failing, meets a vast vacuity. All unawares, flute string his pennons, vein plumb down he drops, 10,000 fathom deep, and to his hour down and been falling. Had not by ill chance the strong rebuff of some tumultuous cloud, instinct with fire and nitre, hurried him as many miles aloft, that fury stayed, quenched in boggy citrus, neither sea nor good dry land, nigh founded on his fares, treading the crude consistence, half on foot, half flying, behoves him now both oar and sail, as when a griffin through the wilderness with winged course o'er hill or moor dale pursues the I'm getting near the end, you can tell because I keep ballsing it up. Pursues the Arimaspian, who by stealth had from his wakeful custody purloined the guarded gold. So eagerly the fiend, o'er bog or steep, through strait, rough, dense or rare, with heads, hands, wings or feet pursues his way, and swims or sinks, or wades or creeps or flies. At length a universal hubbub wild, of stunning sounds and voices all confused, borne through the hollow dark, assaults his ear with loudest vehemence. Thither he plies, undaunted to meet there whatever power or sprite or spirit of the nethermost abyss might in that noise reside, of whom to ask which way the nearest coast of darkest lies, bordering on light, when straight behold the throne of chaos and his dark pavilion spread. Wide on the wasteful deep, with him enthroned, sat sable-vested night, eldest of things, the consort of his reign, and by them stood Orcus and Aides, and the dreaded name of Demigorgon, rumour next, and chance and tumult and confusion, all embroiled, and discord with 1,000 various mouths. To whom Satan turning boldly thus, Ye powers and spirits of the nethermost abyss, chaos and ancient night, I come no spy, with purpose to explore or to disturb the secrets of your realm, but by constraint wandering this darksome desert, as my way lies through your spacious empire, up to light, alone and without guide, half lost, I seek what readiest path leads where your gloomy bounds confine with heaven, or if some other place from your dominion won, the ethereal king possesses lately. Thither to arrive I travel this profound direct my course, directed no mean recompense it brings to your behoof, if I that region lost, all usurpation thence expelled, reduced to her original darkness and your sway, which is my present journey, and once more erect the standard there of ancient night. Yours be the advantage all, mine the revenge. Thus Satan, and him thus the anarch old, with faltering speech and visage incomposed, answered, I know thee, stranger, who thou art, that mighty leading angel, who of late made head against heaven's king. Thou overthrown, I saw and heard, for such a numerous host fled not in silence through the frightened deep, with ruin upon ruin, rout on rout, confusion worse confounded, and heaven's gates poured out millions her victorious bands pursuing. I upon my frontiers here keep residence, if all I can will serve that little which is left so to defend, encroached on still through our intestine broils, weakening the sceptre of old night. First hell your dungeon stretching far and wide beneath. Now lately heaven and earth, another world hung our realm, linked in a golden chain to that side heaven from whence your legions fell. If that way be your walk, you've not far. So much nearer danger go and speed. Havoc and spoil and ruin are my gain. He ceased, and Satan stayed not to reply, but glad that now his sea should find a shore, with fresh alacrity and force renewed, springs upwards like the pyramid of fire into a wild expanse, and through the shock of fighting elements on all sides round, environed wins his way, harder beset and more endangered than when Argo passed through Bosporus betwixt the justling rocks, or when Ulysses on the larboard shunned Charybdis, and by the other whirlpool steered. So he with difficulty and labour hard moved on, with difficulty and labour he. But he once passed soon after who, when men fell, strange alteration, sin and death amain, following his track, such was the will of heaven, paved after him a broad and beaten way over the dark abyss, whose boiling gulf tamely endured a bridge of wondrous length from hell continued, reaching the utmost orb of this frail world, by which the spirits perverse with ease intercourse passed to and fro to tempt and punish mortals, except whom God and good angels guard by special grace. But now at least his sacred influence of light appears, and from the walls of heaven shoots far into the bosom of dim night a glimmering dawn. Here nature first begins her farthest verge, and chaos to retire as from her outmost works a broken foe, with torment less and with less hostile din. Then Satan with this toil, and now with ease, wafts on the calmer wave by dubious light, and like a weather-beaten vessel holds gladly the port, though shrouds and tackle torn, or in the emptier wastes resembling air waves his spread wings, at leisure to behold far off the imperial heaven, extended wide in circuit, undetermined square or round, with opal towers and battlements adorned, of living sapphire, once his native seat, and fast by hanging golden chain, this pendant world, in bigness as a star of the smallest magnitude, close by the moon, thither full fraught with mischievous revenge, accursed, and in a cursed hour he hies. The end of the second book. of Paradise Lost. There you go. That is book 2 of Paradise Lost. Quite a bit of a longer one, that one. Next week, same time, same place, we shall go into book 3. If you would like to know more about, not Satan, but another name of Satan, Lucifer, and the historical and mythical origins of Lucifer, and why Lucifer is not in the Bible, you can go check out the podcast at any good place that you find podcasts. The Drunken Storyteller podcast, where at the moment I'm doing lots of demony, devilly stuff. As I say, this last episode was on Lucifer and their mythical origins and how they came to, I suppose, Abrahamic religions, where they came from, God, planet, king. Go have a listen, go enjoy it. Anyway, all the socials and things will be in links and stuff. You can find me on BlueSky and Threads and stuff. I don't really do much social media. I'm on Facebook as well, the Drunken Storyteller on Facebook. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. And next week we shall be back with book 3. I'm hoping at the same time. I'm back at work now, so we'll just see what happens. And maybe it'll be 8 o'clock, maybe 8:30. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, all that is left for me to say is goodbye, my friends.